We all know the question, so tell me a bit about yourself. But despite how familiar it is, it tends to throw people off. It sounds casual, but it definitely is not. And by the end of this video, I want you to have a clear understanding of how you can really take advantage of the opportunities that this question offers. And how we're going to do that is to speak about what the question is and what it isn't, and how you can use that to shape the conversation that follows. If you've ever wondered how to make this answer work for you, not just to fill time, then stay with me. I sometimes think that the real question that is being asked here is, what are you doing here? Right? But of course, that would be way too direct and a bit rude. So instead, an interviewer says, so tell me a bit about yourself. Let's get clear on what this moment is and how to approach it strategically in your next interview. We'll begin with the most common mistake, answering the wrong question. Many candidates, when asked to introduce themselves, they actually answer a completely different question. They might say something like, I'm a third year medical student and I've done rotations in cardiology, psychiatry, and internal medicine. Or if it's a job interview, I have a degree in marketing and I've spent the last 5 years working in different digital strategy roles. And these aren't wrong answers, they're just answers to the wrong question. What's happening there is that the candidate is walking the interviewer through their CV, giving some kind of chronological work summary. And there's a true cost to doing this. Even though it's not a bad answer, a candidate who does that risks losing influence of how the story is framed. All control of your narrative is being handed over, and you've not even had the chance to shape it. And early on, that can make a difference between a conversation that flows and one that flattens. This moment isn't just about information, it's about framing. Let's be clear on what the self introduction is not. It's not your resume in paragraph form. That might be useful if they ask you to walk them through your experience or your resume later in the interview. But for the self introduction, it sounds flat and overly detailed. It's not a list of everything that you've done. And don't get me wrong, a rundown of your experiences, it's absolutely relevant later in the interview. But listing it off too early overwhelms the listener and gives them no clear narrative. It's not a question that asks for your life story or even your professional journey starting from your education. That might come up naturally if asked about your background or your journey of your career, but it would be off focus for your self introduction. The self introduction is also not a rundown of your personality traits or hobbies. These are important, but they're best shown through your behavior and examples, not just stated up front. Saying, I'm hardworking, it doesn't mean much without evidence. Self introduction is also not a chronology of your educational or professional timeline. This belongs in the resume itself or in response to questions about your academic or career path, but not in the first 2 minutes of your interview. These things, they feel safe, they feel familiar, but they don't create a structure for the interviewer to follow. And they don't answer the question, why are you here? Why you now? What happens often when you approach your intro in this way is that you overwhelm the interviewer with too much detail. And when that happens, they may miss the key themes that you want them to remember. The impact of your message, it gets diluted, and the interviewer may struggle to make sense of what's important. I think that when a candidate does this, they miss the opportunity to let the interviewer know what to ask about next. And even though interviewers come to interviews with their own questions, and those questions are the priority, a powerful self introduction plants seeds for follow up questions that you want to speak more about. But when your intro lacks structure or clarity, it doesn't lead anywhere. When this happens, a candidate also misses the chance to focus their attention on what really matters. And that's a huge missed opportunity to direct the conversation towards the experiences and strengths that support your candidacy. Instead of owning the narrative, they let it wander. A self introduction that tries to say everything, it ends up meaning nothing. That's why we need to define what a self introduction really is. What is this moment really about? It's about setting the tone, it's about framing your candidacy and giving the interviewer a way to understand the rest of the conversation. Think of it as your opening argument, one you should be prepared to deliver under 4 minutes. And if you're preparing for a medical residency or a fellowship interview, aim for about 2 minutes. The structure and the clarity definitely matter more than the length, but time limits are important. So let's use two metaphors to explain this. First, the lawyer's opening statement. Think about how a lawyer begins opening arguments before a trial begins. They do, in fact, reference every key piece of evidence, but not in detail. They give the jury an outline of what they're going to see and hear without diving into the full arguments or cross examinations. They don't lead with deep details or emotional persuasion, nor do they expect to rest the case after they've completed their opening argument. Instead, they set the table for what's coming so that the jury knows how to interpret it. They give a mile wide, inch deep summary of the case, and this opens the jury's ears for what's to come. They lay out what the jury is going to see. They preview the kinds of evidence, witnesses, and themes that will emerge, and they leave no surprises. Everything is laid out clearly from the beginning so the jury knows how to interpret what's coming next. The purpose isn't to convince the jury in that moment. It's to give them a framework to open their ears, to help them listen actively, to make sure they know what to watch out for and how the story all fits together. And I think that's how a candidate should think about their self introduction. You're not trying to prove anything yet. You're laying the foundation for what you will prove in the rest of the interview with your evidence. Just like a strong lawyer opens with, "Today I'm going to show you that." Your job is to frame the conversation. Here's who I am. Here's what matters. Here's what kind of experience I bring. And here's the kind of evidence you'll hear as we go deeper. You're offering structure, direction, context. And a great self introduction gets the interviewer nodding along because they can already see where this is going. They start to trust you've thought about this, that you understand what the role requires, and that you're going to help them make sense of your experiences without wandering all over the place. So don't think of the self introduction as an autobiography. Think of it as setting up the lens through which everything else will be seen. Just like a good lawyer, you're organizing the story so that when you present your evidence, your stories, your case studies, your results, your insights, they land exactly the way that you want them to. I also like this second metaphor. The self introduction, it's kind of like a movie trailer before the movie begins. Think about what a really great movie trailer actually does. You've probably seen hundreds. And you know the feeling when a trailer just works. You're not only curious, you're already thinking, I want to see that movie. A good trailer doesn't walk you through the plot step by step. It gives you glimpses, the conflict, the mood, the tension. You hear the main character's voice. You see a flash of action, a few dramatic beats, maybe a line of dialogue that stays with you. And you don't walk away with the full story, but you walk away wanting to learn more, wanting to see the full story. You get a sense of what kind of story this is going to be. Is it a fast paced thriller, a thoughtful drama, a story about transformation? And without saying too much, the trailer helps you decide, do I want to lean in and watch this unfold, or maybe not? That's exactly what a self introduction should do for the interviewer. You're not trying to say everything, you're offering a preview. You're giving the interviewer a sense of who you are, what themes your experience speaks to, and what kind of depth they'll find if they ask more. Similar to a movie trailer, your self introduction, it creates energy, it builds interest, it guides expectations. And most importantly, it leaves the interviewer wanting more. Not because you were vague or withholding, but because you were intentional. When you think about your self introduction, don't think about completeness. Think about curiosity. Think about connection. Think about setting the tone for a story that's worth discovering. The key idea that I want you to take away from this is that you're not summarizing the entirety of your career. You're signaling where you want the conversation to go. And you're doing that in a way that builds clarity, trust, curiosity, and interest. It's not about copying a script, it's something more foundational. It's about the why, the purpose, the mindset, the function. It's about building that understanding. That way, when you do sit down and create your self introduction, the bullet points, use the APMPF framework. By the way, it's linked in the description. You can request it using that link and I will send it out right away because it's not about guesswork, it's about design. A self introduction leads to follow up questions, right? And those follow up questions lead to insight and wrap up. I think this is the architecture of most interviews. And your self introduction, it plants the seed for everything that follows. And if your self introduction is unclear, scattered, undirected, forgettable, it affects the rest of your interview. The questions that they ask, the way they understand your answers, the parts of your story that get all the attention, it all starts with the self introduction. And how you answer is your opportunity to shape what comes next. Let's make this concrete with a quick example. Let's imagine someone begins their self introduction with, I've spent the last 3 years working at the intersection of clinical operations and data quality, leading initiatives that reduce error rates and improve system adoption across departments. So, what might follow after that self introduction? How does it take a little bit of soft control over the conversation? I think some behavioral questions about cross functional leadership, follow ups on metrics and outcomes, questions about stakeholder management or health tech tools. This is a portion of another person's self introduction. After growing up in a multilingual home, I became fascinated by how language influences care, and that's what's led me to work in both translation and community based healthcare settings. This could lead to certain follow up questions, questions about communication and patient care, fit based questions about DEI or patient engagement, or even a deeper exploration of this career motivation. And these are not fun facts. It's also not the full story. They're anchors. They guide where the conversation is going to go. If you don't plant seeds, then the interviewer might have to guess. And they might miss the most relevant parts of your story simply because you didn't put them on the map. So, when you're preparing your self introduction, ask yourself some questions. What parts of my experience do I want to invite questions about? What do I want to be known for? What kind of conversation do I want to have? It's not about controlling every detail or definitely not about taking the steering wheel away from the interviewer. It's about giving the conversation a shape. It's about giving a strong opening argument, a strong trailer to your career, helping your interview help you. So let's take a moment just to lower the pressure a bit. You don't need to say everything in your self introduction. You're not being evaluated on how much you can cram into a few minutes. You're being evaluated on how clearly you can communicate what matters most. This moment doesn't need to carry the weight of your entire career and its story. No interviewer will know everything about you in 2, 3, 4 minutes, or even 30. But what they can know very quickly is whether you're thoughtful, organized, and intentional. So instead of trying to impress them with volume, focus on giving them a clear and steady foundation. Zoom your focus on those themes that matter most. Communicate thoughtfully on why you're there. Put the dots on the page in your self introduction and let the interviewer connect those dots in the time left in the interview with the remaining questions that they ask. Clarity is often more impressive than complexity. And when you speak with clarity, the interviewer can follow you. You're not trying to sell yourself. You're helping the interviewer start the conversation somewhere that matters. And the interviewer, you're giving them something that they can work with by answering the tell me about yourself question in this way. You're giving them structure, direction, and that's what sets the tone for a meaningful conversation. And of course, if you want support crafting your own self introduction, check out my self introduction worksheet. It's the same one that I use with clients and it's free for viewers. You can request it using the link in the description. And of course, if you'd like for us to meet one on one for more personalized support, my booking link is also in the description. So if this helps shift how you think about interviews, give the video a like. It's something that I really appreciate. And be sure to subscribe so that Omni Interview is on your team as you prepare. I publish new content regularly, so let's make sure that you stay in the loop. And if you're preparing for an important interview and have a question about how to interview better, if there's a question that's been asked to you in interviews that's keeping you up at night, let me know in the comments. I really enjoy connecting with Omni Interviews community here on YouTube. If you've made it this far in the video, it's because you're serious about communicating meaningfully in your upcoming interview. You're already on your way to a strong self introduction and a strong interview. Keep going. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.